morning, Avon Mennonite Church. Greetings to you in the name and fellowship of Jesus Christ. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to contribute to your service today, though I wish it were in person. I spent many summers during my high school years in the Exeter, Zurich, and Grand Bend area, with the occasional trip to Stratford. What a beautiful place you live in, and I wish I could return for a visit, maybe in the near future, God willing. Last year, about this time, after almost 21 years living in Calgary serving at Foothills Mennonite Church, Rose and I moved to Winnipeg. We have 3 young adult children, the oldest of whom is married, who are all currently living in Winnipeg, and it's great to live in close proximity to all of them again. When moving here, we were fortunate enough to be able to buy a house on the river from some friends. We like to spend time down here by the river bottom, either sitting or trying to keep ahead of the burdocks that seem to grow like crazy around here. So when Pastor Troy asked me to speak today in your service about the essence of the church, and with us thinking about this in the time of COVID-19, where we can't worship like we used to for months now, I right away thought of Psalm 137. Psalm 137 is a psalm likely written by the prophet Jeremiah. It was written during the exile of the people to Babylon, and as it goes with war victories, back then the healthy, knowledgeable, and educated people were hauled away from Jerusalem, or Zion as they called it, and taken to Babylon. The rest remained to fend for themselves. Near Jerusalem, the people had the Jordan River, which was intricately involved in their history of coming to the Promised Land when they escaped captivity in Egypt. In Babylon, they got to see the mighty Euphrates and Tigris rivers, much better rivers as far as rivers go, but they weren't at the Jordan anymore. So when they got to the rivers of Babylon, instead of singing the songs that they used to sing by the Jordan River, they hung their harps in the trees, and they sat down and they wept. They were missing home, they were missing everything that they had known. And to make matters worse, their captors were bugging them for a song. They were saying, "Sing to us some of the songs of Zion." And they asked themselves, how can we sing the Lord's song in this strange land? It just doesn't feel right. Though our situation with COVID-19 is nowhere near as severe, it can't be dismissed lightly either. The church has been driven into an exile of sorts. Much of what we have known for decades has now been suspended. And I don't know about you, but it has really made me wonder about all the effort we have been putting into the church and the way we have been the church. All of these committees and worship planning schedules and budgets and congregational meetings and hymnals and Sunday school curriculum that we publish, all of a sudden everything is suspended, and it leaves us a little stunned. For a time, we don't know which end is up, but then after a while, as in the psalm, despair gives way to anger. Psalm 137 is not one that you want to read to your children at bedtime, or if you do, don't go past verse 4. Having said that, Jeremiah is honest. He doesn't push his feelings down like a good Mennonite, but he speaks them, he even shouts them, wanting vengeance against the people who did this to them. Anger can be part of our COVID reality as well. It's frustrating to have our faith and social circles upset as they have been. It's frustrating to be kept away from a place that plays a deep part in our identity. And in our anger, we may not wish anything as graphic as Jeremiah does, but it can be easy to join in on the scapegoating that goes on with different groups in our society. It's those people who are the problem, or they should be charged for being so irresponsible. If it wasn't for them, this would have never happened. In the stages of grief, if we start with denial, then anger, then bargaining, then depression, then acceptance, I think those apply in this time as well. And they also apply to the people of Jeremiah's time. We can probably remember quite a bit of Israelite history. The people are faithful, they're serving God, treating each other well. Then over time they become less enthused, less faithful, they start taking advantage of each other. Then there's a covenant renewal. Everyone is committed now, doing the right things by God and by neighbor. But then over time, we know the cycle. But it was only when the people were forcibly taken to Babylon, ripped away from all that they had known and loved, that they really sat down to examine their past. In fact, it was in Babylon that the profession of the scribe was created. They had all of these stories in circulation, but they really hadn't written them down in any kind of an orderly fashion. And once the scribes began to do that, what became part of our Old Testament, they began to notice patterns in their past. Faithful, then not so much. Faithful again, then not for a while. And it was in that time of exile that they really began to sort out the essence of who they were as a people of God. So in writing down all of these stories, the scribes and others around them kept asking themselves, how did this happen? How can we learn from this? What do we do differently? What do we need to do differently as a people of God to remain faithful? So while there was a great deal of heartache and pain and suffering, it was also a time when renewal came. And when they were allowed to return eventually back to Zion, they came back stronger in their faith, more determined to live in the ways that gave them greater harmony with God and with each other. In this vein, I've been thinking lately about Jesus' conversation with Peter in Matthew 16, when Jesus said to Peter, "Upon you I will build my church." Well, Peter's response is not recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, but it must have felt a little strange to Peter and to all of them. Why would you want a church? Do we need a board? Do we need nominating committees or ushers? It really wasn't until after the resurrection and after Pentecost that it all began to make sense. In 1 Peter 2:9 it says, "You are a chosen people, a holy gathering, God's own possession, to proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." That is one of the many excellent verses that tells us of the essence of the church. The church is to proclaim how God is at work in the world, and it is not to be understood only as the mighty acts that God does apart from us. In fact, most often, throughout Scripture, God acts through people. God is at work, and it is the church's job to recognize where we see the fingerprints of God and where we see God turning water into wine in this place, loaves into fishes in that place, speaking peace to the storms of life in other places. So in this COVID time, in this exile time, it is a time for those of us in the church to sit by the waters of Babylon and reflect a little. Where are we at with our collective efforts of proclaiming the mighty acts of God? Are we known in our communities as being people of good news, people who are speaking words of liberation and freedom? And it might also be a good time for us to sit by the river and think as individuals or family units. Are we living our lives in ways that are bringing glory to God? Are we filling our days with things that give meaning, purpose, and belonging to us and to those around us? Are there things we need to leave once we begin the trek back to Zion? I wish you joy for the journey as you ponder these things. Maybe there is a river or a creek or a body of water that you can go to. I know there is in Stratford, to ponder all that is going on. Maybe, like the scribes, a pen and paper will help you clarify your thoughts, your past and your trajectory of life. I pray that you will sense God's guidance and be fully aware of God's nearness to you, both in your corporate life as Avon Mennonite Church and in all your households. The peace of Christ be with you all. Amen.